so that you can take the focus off of my voice. And we're going to get stuck into this discussion about whitewater kayak construction, which is something that we're all really passionate and stoked about. So here we go. Hey guys, how's it going?
Hello. Doing well.
So Brandon, Tim are both long-term aquabatics paddling instructors and all-round great guys and all-round excellent paddlers. And I'm really happy to have them on board here to just sort of have a free-ranging discussion about kayak construction. Yeah, there's already a comment about the moustache. Thanks, Kelsey. Right on it. On it. Good and early. I love it. So we decided Tim is stuck in New Zealand with his very pink curtains at the Sir Edmund Hillary Outdoor Pursuit Centre, which is in the middle of nowhere and probably a perfect place to be seeing this thing out. We'll go into that in a little bit more details. And it appears Brandon is in front of his spice rack in Bowness, which is equally awesome. So
there's been a lot of cooking in my recent experience.
Have you been? Okay, so we're gonna get right into the randomness here. So has it been baking or has it been cooking?
Well, for me, it's mostly baking. Been doing some sourdough, but I actually was on board with this before the whole pandemic thing, so I've been practicing.
You're a leader. You're a leader. You're not a follower. You could probably do all right just making some tutorials on YouTube for people. You could probably like monetize that, I reckon. There's people
I'm not there yet. Not there yet.
How about you, Tim? What are you doing to kill or to enjoy or to maximize the time out there in New Zealand?
Well, I've been cooking rather than baking, and and running mostly.
So that's a thing now. I'm into running now again as well. So I'm actually learning that I think I'm okay with staying at home, as long as I can go for a run and just kind of get outside a bit. I'm actually all right with it. It's not too bad.
Yeah, the run sorts out the 3 p.m. blues.
Oh, totally, man. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. You just get out and just go for a hoon and get some fresh air. It's good. Well, if we ever get any sunshine in Alberta, it'll be nice as well, because it's just been snowing and miserable for the most part. But it's making this easier to handle, I think. So, yeah, basically we're looking at this just as an open conversation about paddling instruction. And those of you who are tuning in, if you have any specific technique questions or any questions about the progression that we use or like just fact-checking stuff, please just fire it our way, because that'll help us with the discussion. We're not going to make it like a technique-specific thing, because that gets a bit dry. But, yeah, give us some questions and we'll go from there. So that leads me to, if you do have questions and you do chime in, we're going to give away a half-day private kayaking course with one of the three of us. Maybe not Tim this year, because we don't know if he's going to make it. So it might be Brandon or I, but we'll see. So chime in, ask some questions, and we'll go from there. So the first part is, I might just ask Brandon, like, where did you start paddling? Like, how did you get into paddling? Because a lot of people know you as a badass boater and a really good instructor, and they may not know where the origin story is. So give us a rundown on how that all came to be.
Yeah, the background's pretty fun. I got into kayaking back in Quebec. I have a little pond in front of my house, basically a bird bath. And I went out and bought a kayak, had a friend who taught me how to roll, and I basically spent a whole summer just kind of playing in the bird bath, learning how to bow stall. And I don't think I got on a river before I could bow stall, so that's pretty interesting.
Walk and crawl comes to mind. Walk and crawl comes to mind. So you managed to go from like no paddling to paddling in a pond to bow stalling in a year?
Yeah, I just like pulled up YouTube videos inside and then would watch the YouTube video and then go back outside to the pond, like try it for over and over and over again, and then all of a sudden it was working. So
that's awesome. Well, we can share some tales about that when you first showed up at Aquabatics as well. Brandon spent a lot of time at Bowness Eddie's on his own in his orange Project 50. Was it Project? No,
it was a Fuse. A Fuse
that's
48.
Right, Fuse, that's right. Fuse 48, just cartwheeling. And you haven't changed. You still spend a ton of time in flat water, like geeking out on that stuff. It's amazing.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. And so, Tim, what about you? You're obviously from the Southern Hemisphere. What's your origin story with whitewater paddling? I imagine it involves sandbagging, but let's go.
Well, you're not far off the truth there. I was lucky enough to have a family that was into outdoor things, and my dad, particularly into kayaking. But he wanted me to be able to keep up, so I started on a boogie board. And
yes, it's so Kiwi.
by the time I was, I think, 14, I was boogie boarding my first class 4, which this didn't go so well. And so then I was terrified of the river for a long time. And it wasn't until I studied outdoor education at Timaru in the South Island of New Zealand that I took up kayaking again, and yeah, fell in love with it there, and went from having not really kayaked before to paddling class 4 again by the end of the year.
Nice.
Being stoked that kayaking didn't involve swimming, or that's what I thought at the time anyway.
Bouncing off of rocks on a boogie board is less desirable for the most part. So I guess I've actually done that as well. My origin story with paddling was I was a surfer and a climber, and climbers were like, these paddlers in New Plymouth in New Zealand. I'm from Australia, by the way, but I was living in New Zealand, and the paddlers were giving us the gears about how paddling was better than climbing, and so we decided that we'd give it a try. And so I decided that boogie boarding down a river was the way to do it. So went and got my brother's soccer shin guards, a $5 warehouse boogie board, and my surfing wetsuit, and did the same thing. Went and tried to boogie board a class 4 section of river and bled a lot. Also learned a lot about shuttling, and that you need to take your keys with you. So we had a very embarrassing walk with pink boogie boards back up to the service station, because there was no cell phones, and to call my mum to come and pick us up. So that was one of my first whitewater experiences. So yeah, boogie boarding, I can relate. Yeah. So we've got a couple of questions already coming in here. We'll let's address them. We might as well. And I'll put this one to, where did it go? Oh, there it is. I'll put this one to you, Brandon. It is going to come up on the screen when I push the button right. When I get tired, I find myself not setting up consistently underwater for my sweep roll. What can I focus on to wrap up better? So wrap around the boat, I'm guessing. Thanks, Antonio.
Well, I think that as soon as you flip underwater, you're into the third realm, and the whole time scale becomes a lot different. So really, you have a lot more time than you necessarily think. So I feel like just giving yourself a little bit more extra time to relax is always a good thing. Perhaps maybe have a number that you count to in your head when you flip over. That can be an option. And then another thing that I've found that works really well for people is try to wrap yourself around your kayak as much as you can, and then think to yourself, okay, I can go further. And then you do like a very intentional, like, second wrap, if you know what I mean, to like get yourself that much further. And another thing to play around with is the angle of your wrists. So playing around with how your paddle slices through the water, because you want to make sure that the paddle allows you to slice it as far to the surface as possible, and you're not like resisting against the pressure on the backside of the blade or anything like that. So those will be, yeah.
Nice. Because I think of it as the first part is a float, like you're floating your body, rotating and floating your body to the surface, and then you do that secondary wrap that you were talking about, and then you go boom from there and sort of start the roll. So I dig that. Anything to add there, Tim?
Yeah, I think something to practice in the pool or on flat water is, if you've got a roll on both sides, set up on one side, switch under the water, and then do your practice roll, or set up on the side you don't usually roll on, and then switch to your rolling side, and then go for your roll in practice, so that you're not always practicing from that perfectly set up position.
Yeah, so that it gives you a bit of spatial awareness, right? So Tim, we'll give you the next one from Tanya. Hi, Tanya.
Oh, wow.
I know my answer. We'll all answer this. You go first, Tim.
Well, it's a place I call the Awesome on the Kananaskis. I might be from New Zealand, but I always find myself looking for that particular eddy tip on the Kananaskis River.
All right, Brandon, what's yours?
Perfect.
Man, yeah, I would say the Kananaskis is a pretty mind blowing place to learn how to move around, and practice those strokes and maneuvers. But um, I also like moving into more bigger water feel. So when I was learning, I paddled on the clear water quite a bit,
Oh yeah,
and getting a little bit more of a push to the flow can also be a good thing for practicing. Yeah.
nice. Mine's the Highwood. I love the Highwood. The Highwood from Eden Valley down, like that first little section. It's just so good. And when it's low, it's great for beginners. When it's high, it's good for intermediate and advanced paddlers. And there's just so many different dynamic moves you can do in there. I definitely like locally here for sure. The Highwood is definitely my go-to. What? um, all right. This is changing directions with the questions that we're getting, but whatever, man. We're just gonna roll with it. So Maya, who may or may not be
she's like in the same room as
she's
me
in the
right
same
now.
room.
Yeah.
What did your first kayak outfit, helmet, etc. look like? All right. I'm gonna go first on this one.
Yeah, you go, Simon.
So my first kayaking outfit was skin to win all the way, baby. There was nothing other than skin to win. It was board shorts and skin and a PFD, and that was it. And I paddled in the spring in New Zealand, skin to win, which is not as cold as the spring in Canada, but it's pretty damn cold. And so for those of you, like Tim knows this, those of you who have been in New Zealand, Access 10, the Tongariro River, that was one of my first class 3 runs. It's a long run. It's like 16 or 17 Ks, skin to win. The water's as cold there as it is here. That was it, man. I had a super heinous AP 2000 helmet that like sat about 4 inches above my head, and I had a paddle that had broken 3 or 4 times, and I just riveted it back together. Like just had a piece of aluminum pipe on the inside and had 4 or 5 rivets in it, 90-degree feather, and that was my outfit. We need Brandon to go next because Brandon was awesome.
Well, I was pretty clueless in the early days of my paddling, and Quebec's got pretty warm water, and so I was using just basically skin to win like you, Simon. But when I went on my first river trip, which was solo down in Maine on this like dam release in the spring, I was wearing a cotton t-shirt and fishing PFD, as well as a helmet that I had painted orange to match my kayak. I had spray painted it. And so yeah, that's basically it. And the other good piece of kit that I was using when I came to Aquabatics actually was a pair of sweatpants that I put over top of my wetsuit because I thought it would add some insulation. So
that was amazing. That was amazing. I'm sorry. Thank you, Maya. I know you wanted us to get that out. I'm glad you prompted us and made it less awkward than me just saying it. So, Tim, you're from New Zealand. Every Kiwi who's ever turned up to work at Aquabatics has had the most ghetto gear I've ever seen. So what was your like pre-Timaru kayaking outfit? What did it look like?
So I mostly scrounged it from my parents' garage. I had a wooden 90-degree offset paddle, my dad's Piranha 230, and I had a bright fluorescent pink PFD. A helmet that said kayak on it, so it must have been for kayaking. And a body glove wetsuit that I think I got when I was 16.
Ooh,
so was beginning to get a little snug and had plenty of, probably just as many holes in it as the other would have had. And then I had this great splash top as well, just to put over the top. I don't think I did anything.
Yeah, that's good, but Brandon definitely wins that one for sure.
I think so.
Yeah, I don't know how you can do worse than skin to win except for putting on a cotton t-shirt.
Yeah, and cotton tracksuit pants.
Yeah.
Sensational. So Paige, hi Paige. Paige has been checking in a bunch. Paige and Dale, I think they're on the same account right now, and that's all good. So favorite runs. What do you reckon, guys? What are your favorite runs? If you had to give us top 2 or top 3.
I think my favorite river trip and probably my favorite week of paddling was in Australia, actually. on the Herbert River and on the North Johnston River. Yeah.
Yeah. Which was pre-COVID-19. We were going to do an Aquabatics kayak trip to Cairns and to Tasmania, but that'll just have to wait for another year, I think. Brandon was an inspiration for me to go back to my own country to go paddling. It's pretty sad, isn't it? Tim, what about you?
Oh, there's so many. It's so hard to choose. But I think a local favorite of here is the White Isle, which is a dam release that flows every Sunday. And I know it's not a remote crazy run, but it's just so enjoyable to go and paddle something that's that class and quality, and is so easy to get to and enjoy laps of all day. Yeah. I have to say, I think the Zambezi, I keep going back to what my favorite run ever was. I think the Zambezi is my favorite run, and it's a bit of a combination of culture and the river and just everything associated with it. It's pretty awesome. I really dig that place. But yeah, too many to mention, right? Like you know, if you just do a quick tabulation in your head of how many rivers you've run in your life, it's pretty hard to pick one out of them because it's a lot, right? It's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
All right, there's another good one. This ties in with oh, I can't see it all. It should say, what was everyone's first boat?
Well, we've mentioned mine already. It was the Wavesport Fuse 48.
Yeah, the Fuse 48.
The crossover river play kayak.
That's right, yeah. Which is still current. Like UAPS still have a bunch of them at the pool, and they're fun. You can still cartwheel them and stuff.
For sure.
Tim?
So my first boat that I actually owned, which is still my favorite boat of all time, is the RPM Max.
Oh, right. Yeah, you guys love those things. Mine was the Feel Free Cosmic 2 was what it was called. It was a Chinese rubbish bin. It was horrible.
You win the best name, though.
Yeah, dude, the Feel Free Cosmic 2. Yeah, and it was black. It was black, and then it went skin to win. It was awesome. That was my first boat with a black paddle. It was very, very stealthy indeed. So, yeah, moving on. Let's just see. What else have we got here? Let me just see what we got down here.
A lot of banter about my mustache.
There's definitely banter about your mustache. What do we got here from Frank? So what do people mess up on their forward strokes, and what can more people focus on as far as drills go? Well, I could get into this. I know Tim we can all get into this. I'm going to start it with a very basic thing. My personal thing is obviously body rotation, which is important to everything, but it's giving people practical drills for how to rotate their body, because I find it's quite hard for intermediate or beginner paddlers to understand what body rotation in a forward paddling stroke looks like. And so I personally use like a sweep stroke, teaching people how to use a sweep stroke with body rotation, and then slowly move the paddle more vertically, and just making sure they continue to feel that torso rotation, and not being afraid to let the boat move backwards and forwards a little bit. The boat's not going to go in a dead straight line, even when you're paddling really well. So start with a low angle blade, really wind your body up, sweep, let the bow drift backwards and forwards, and then slowly get the paddle more vertical. That's definitely my go-to. Chime in, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Go for it,
Tim.
Oh, okay. I think another really common error is really long strokes. Is you feel like you've still got power, but we're lifting water behind the body. So shortening that stroke and bringing the blade out nice and early. And again, I think that ties into aiding with body rotation as well, because if you're slicing that blade out, it encourages you to rotate forward for that next stroke.
Mm-hmm. And I think what goes along with that, you're saying shortening the stroke, and I think that means like closer to the end of your stroke, taking it out a little sooner. But another good one to add in is to reach that extra 6 inches further forward when you plant it. So in that initial catch phase. And a good drill, like Simon had our clients just tape a spot on their boat where they're trying to reach to, that's just that extra little bit further forward, and then you're trying to always reach for that far forward plant of your blade.
Yeah, that's a really good drill, and it's a good reference point. It's something you can practice, Frank, like no problems on your own. Just take an evaluation of like where your paddle goes in the water on a normal stroke, and then and try not to lean forwards to get that extra. Try not to lean forwards to get that extra reach. Actually, open your body up and reach forwards with that front hand, and you'll find that you get a lot more reach without having to adjust your trim awkwardly backwards and forwards, and probably makes you look seasick in a live stream like this. So hopefully that helped, Frank. Jens, hey Jens, how's it going, man? What do you find works well to long periods of plateau within your whitewater skills? In other words, what works best for you to get to your next level? Is it simply more time on the river, courses, or paddle with someone above your level? I like this. Go. Go. Brandon. Boom.
Okay. Well, I think getting better at kayaking requires a combination of things. And probably the best way to do it is to find somebody, for one, who's better than you to paddle with, like you said, who you can just follow very closely and you're trying to hit like exactly the lines that they're getting. Another one would be to get out in front and lead your group. The more you do that, the better you're going to get at reading the river, and it's going to improve a lot of things. And then as long as you're doing those two things in your own time, and you're spending lots of time boating, then every now and then just intersperse a course with a good instructor, and you'll be able to then hopefully use that time to boost you to the next level. So each time in between your courses should be priming you and getting you ready for taking on new information.
Tim?
Yeah, I second that for sure. Time in a boat, you know, if you can, three times a week, even if that's on flat water, and time between courses is really important. If you're just taking courses, then it's really hard to progress, because you are coming to the course and having to find your balance, find your feet again, if you like. Whereas if you've got that time in a boat between, then you'll find that you can actually make the most of that instructor time. So I think getting out on the water is really the key thing.
Yeah, and it's one of those. It's actually one, and depending at the level you're at, it's one of the things that we sort of had slated in here to discuss, but we've had some really good questions, so more than happy to just follow this format. It's really quite great. But one of the things we were going to talk about was sort of whitewater philosophies and how we go about teaching whitewater paddling. And one of the things is where does whitewater instruction kind of end in some regards, like as far as people's personal progressions? At what point, to a certain level, good instructors can detect and correct and make adjustments to improve your paddling, like over the course of a weekend, right? You could go out on a course with Brandon or Tim, and at an intermediate level, and you could go and you could do that. And even if you didn't get in your boat for a couple of weeks, you'd remember it. It's simple enough. But at some point, Jens, you get, and probably where you're at right now, to be honest, other than the bung shoulder, is you just need to put time in, and it's just time having different experiences, interacting with different types of water, interacting with different rivers, interacting with different paddlers and how they see the river. We're talking with some canoeists like last week, and if you paddle with a whitewater canoeist on a river, they look at the water very differently than a whitewater kayaker does. And so you start to learn different ways of approaching things. So yeah, it's a lot of mileage, I think, at a point where you don't get to become a class 4 or a class 5 boater by not putting in a bunch of time. So I think that's really important. So on that, hopefully that helps, Jens. Give us a comment if you've got any further, would like more elaboration on that. Let's put it to Tim and Brandon, and maybe back to me at some point, is what about you guys? Obviously been paddling for a long time. This journey to become very good, very talented, well-rounded kayakers and kayak instructors has been obviously a fun one, a rewarding one, but pretty long. What are some of your learning moments that you've had that really stick out in your mind over the last sort of 5 to 10 years, or however long it's taken, that have really left an impact on you?
Want to go? Okay. I would say one that really sticks out to me is fairly early on when I was at Aquabatics, taking some, I guess we were paddling on the can with, I think it was with you, Simon. Well, yeah. It for sure was. And you were showing me how you can progress from doing an eddy turn and make that eddy turn become your technique for a boof. So it's like, using an eddy turn and then dropping or using a little bit more elevation in your eddy line and getting a little bit higher and higher and higher, and just kind of progressing that technique to basically boofing. And yeah, that was really interesting for me, because up until that point, I think I had just pictured it as time your stroke at the edge of the lip and hope that there's a rock that you can bounce off of to land flat, right? So seeing that there was a lot more body mechanics to it was one for me. Yeah.
Nice. Tim, what's an aha moment over the years?
I've had a couple that come to mind. One is in my second year of paddling, I took someone up on some flatwater slalom. They were practicing for an assessment themselves, and they were looking for people to learn flatwater slalom. So I was like, sure, I'll do that. And that got me in my boat for an hour each day, maybe 4 times a week. And I went from spending most of my time in class 3 and 4 upside down to spending most of it upright in the course of I don't know, 6 months or so. And I found that flatwater had such a huge impact on my ability on the river. And then the other was arriving at Aquabatics staff training, feeling pretty good about my paddling. I'd come off a really big season of paddling on the west coast of New Zealand, paddling lots of hard whitewater. And Simon, you asked us to do a really straightforward S-turn move in the race course. And I was like, oh yeah, I can do that, easy as. And I probably didn't even take my paddle out of the water once. And I honestly thought I'd nailed it. And then you asked us to do it using only sweep strokes. And I couldn't even make it to the other side of the river, let alone look good. So that was a humbling moment, and a reminder that it's by using the basics, we can learn to feel the water. And now, even when I'm paddling hard things, I use much simpler strokes with my boat in the right place. So I think that had a really big impact on my paddling.
That's cool. Like it's one, I would say I've got an aha moment from many years ago, but just to extend on that a little bit, one of the things that I think have taken the most pride in over the years, and pride's probably not the right word, but watching you guys paddle as you progress into the hardest paddling of your life. I'm sort of very much on the backside of that, but seeing how what we've all worked together to build as a progression, because it's not all me. Like it's been pulled from the UK, and it's been pulled from Canada, it's been pulled from New Zealand, it's been pulled from like ideas that Brandon's had, and ideas that Blair has had, and ideas that Dean's had, and Tim and Anne and everyone. And it's all this mishmash, and it's come to this like Aquabatics progression where we're trying to like create clone paddlers all over the place. But to actually see people paddle class 5 using that has been one of the most rewarding things that I've had personally as an instructor, is to watch that and see everyone progressing, and it sort of validates how we've put it all together, which has been really exciting. One of my aha moments from personal paddling happened when I was working in France at a British outdoor education center, and I was paddling the Chateau Kieras Gorge in high water, and I was with these sort of early days class 5 paddling for me, and these 2 older English gentlemen paddlers, and we were standing way up at the top of this very deep canyon, the Chateau Kieras Gorge, and there's this big hole that like leads into an undercut on river left, and I was terrified. And these guys were like in their 50s probably. And I'm standing there, I'm like, oh, that's not runnable. And like, yeah, dude, just put your elbow into it. Just push your elbow into it. I'm like, what do you mean put my freaking elbow into it? They're like, just go this way, move across current, and just duck, put your elbow into it and edge, then you'll be good. We promise. And I did it with no faith at all that they were right. And they were right. And it's influenced my teaching as much as any other thing, I think, ever. Like everyone who's had an intermediate lesson with me has probably heard like, yep, duck your head, put your elbow into it, and you'll be good. It was phenomenal. And it was just one moment. So that was one of the more like influential aha moments that I've ever had, for sure. So Odin, who has been taught by all of us at one point or another, what's the best big waterfall for practicing plugging? Odin's a teenager, just to let everyone know. So you guys are probably more qualified to talk about this than I am these days. What would your ideal sort of bigger plugging waterfall be that you know of?
I mean, man, like I'm still not all that good at it. I think I've run Sutherland 3 times, and it's ended up in a booth where I broke my boat, over the handlebars where I ended up in the pool, and one kind of okay line. So I don't know if I'm qualified for this, but it seems like for our area, Sutherland, if you're looking for something bigger than 40 feet, seems to be a pretty good bet.
Yeah. Tim, what about you? Like internationally, can you think of anything?
Yeah, a waterfall that comes to mind in New Zealand in particular is Maruria Falls. Basically, if you can get into a kayak and know how to take a spray skirt off, you're qualified to run Maruria, I'm pretty sure. But it's a really great waterfall for practicing plugging for sure. It's a safe waterfall to plug, and it's high enough that it hurts if you don't get it right, but it doesn't hurt a lot.
Yeah. It's what, 28 feet or something like that? Like 8 meters?
12 meters.
Oh, it's that tall. Okay, it's pretty tall.
But it's real fluffy at the bottom. It's a good waterfall.
It'd be a little scary to plug though, no? It's like,
is it shallow?
Got a fairly solid recirc to it. Maybe not.
I've only ever paddled it in my first year of paddling, believe it or not. And I definitely plugged it.
Whether he wanted to or not. So I have to qualify this. Kiwis are total sandbaggers. The only people that continue whitewater kayaking in New Zealand are the very strong or very brave. It's an attrition-based system. It's quite interesting because they have this in Zoya. They have the New Zealand Outdoor Instructors Association. So when you're in school, they put you into a school course, and then they run you through with their Zoya Kayak Level 1 instructors, and then they have a great old time. And then when you get old enough that, you know, liability isn't such a big thing, you just run people off things like Anafenua Falls in their like second day in a kayak. And it's like, whatever, 15, 20 feet, whatever it is. And it's not that straightforward. And then 80% of people quit. The rest of them become Zoya kayak instructors. And then the circle starts again. It's brilliant.
That's the trial by fire.
Yeah, man, it's brilliant. So if you ever go to New Zealand and and you're like, should I run that river? And they'll be like, yeah, bro, you'll be right. Just walk away. Just walk right away.
It's a good idea. You get to filter out everybody who's not going to make it in the sport. Let's be honest. And then
so no one except for their second day in a boat in New Zealand paddles class 2. Class 2 is empty. There's no one there. There's no one there. So moving on. Gardner Falls is a good waterfall.
Oh, I hear Gardner Falls at low water is like an exceptional place to learn how to plug.
Yeah,
Odin can attest to this. I think he broke his boat on it.
Yeah, I think the other one that's really good is Overland is really good for plugging as well, right, Odin?
Oh, indeed.
Sorry, I didn't mean that. That was rude. Okay, so moving on. David from Fort McMurray. Hi, Dave. How's it going? So, best Western Canadian multi-day trip for beginners to intermediates. Beginner, for me, is the Kootenay. Like, I love the Kootenay. Sure. I think the Kootenay's amazing. What do you guys think as far as intermediate runs go?
Ooh.
The Skeena.
Do you have anything there, Tim?
The Babine is amazing.
I'm thinking
Babine, I haven't done that.
Skeena kind of area. I haven't done them either, but that's the first river that comes to mind. Bit of a hike from Calgary, but
I did a really fun trip up to the Upper Adams River recently with some of the BBKC boys. And you could turn that into an overnighter if you started a ways further upstream, and that would be pretty cool. It's like class 4.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's like east of Kamloops, right?
North. It's like just east of Clearwater.
Oh, wow. Okay, it's that far north.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
You could easily turn I was going to say, if you wanted a road-assisted multi-day with a couple of portages, then the bottom part of the Clearwater would be really great, depending on what you want to paddle or portage. You can start from the road on the river right at the end of it, and over a couple of days paddle all the way down to the bridge in town, portaging a couple of rapids that might be a little bit much if you're at that intermediate grade, but other than that, beautiful roadside camping, so you don't have to carry your multi-day gear, but cool little expedition style paddle there.
I've even thought about doing an overnighter on the Highwood.
Yeah, man, like you could totally do an overnighter on there. You know, we did when it was like 100 something CMS the day that we thought Bayman was going to drown. We did the whole thing pretty quick, but yeah, like you could totally do that as a cool multi-day trip, right? You could paddle all the way down to like High River, all the way. It'd be pretty sweet. The other one that actually would be kind of cool is at a class 2 kind of level is you could start on the Ghost River, which is up by Cypress, and you put in there, and then you paddle down and camp. It's all Crown land in there, so camp in there, and then paddle into the Ghost Dam. Then you paddle a few Ks on flat water, and then you jump the dam, and then you go down to the Wildcat Hills Island, and then you camp on the Wildcat Hills Island, and then you come back down to you finish in Cochrane or down in Calgary kind of thing. So
yeah, that'd be a fantastic local way to do an overnighter.
Yeah, class 2, easy class. Yeah, just basically a class 2 kind of cruise. That would be really fun. Don't know about it up in your neck of the woods, Dave, but those would all be really good options. Brian, I like this question. This is good. So, what's your favorite story from a whitewater weekend intro course? There's got to be some good ones. There's got to be some good ones for sure. Mine's not an intro course one. I'll let these guys think about it because they've taught intro courses more recently than me, Brian. But my best, I got a few like not that funny ones from intro courses, but I was evaluating Blair. For those of you who know Blair, I was evaluating Blair on an L2I2. So for him to become an instructor, and he was running the day, and I was just keeping my distance. And at one point, he had one of the guests. He asked if I could carry the keys of one of the guests, of one of the guinea pigs, and it was a Subaru, and it had the fancy key, and it was all electronic and everything, and it was a really hot day, so I was just like, yeah, whatever. I put it in the front of my PFD, and we pulled into the lagoon on the Ghost, and it was 30 degrees or whatever, and everyone was doing bombs off the side at lunchtime, and I didn't even think about it, and I just like took a bite of my sandwich, turned and ran and launched into the water. And as I jumped, I just heard Blair say, "Simon, keys!" And I was like, oh no, committed, landed in there, killed the keys, had to get the car towed all the way from the Ghost Dam back into town. And I had to fail him on the evaluation. It was a really bad weekend. It cost me like $1,000. Oh yeah, so that's my best course story for me acting like a Muppet.
There you go.
All right, so Tim, what's your best intro weekend?
I definitely can't top that, but the story that comes to mind is my first ever Aquabatics intro course, and I felt like it was a bit of a welcome to Canada moment. And we pulled over for lunch at the island on the bow, and it immediately just starts puking with snow. And I just remember thinking to myself, we're kayaking, and by the time we finished lunch, there was 10 centimeters of snow on the ground. Welcome to Canada.
Welcome to Canada, man. Welcome to Canada. What about you, Brandon?
I'm a bit at a loss at the moment. I can't really think of anything.
All right. Well, we've already been at this for 40 minutes, and we've still got like tons of questions to go through. So let's start moving through them a little bit. Sorry, Brian. We got a few for you there. So any tips for hip flick timing and rolling? Tim?
Have a launch sequence.
Okay.
So rolling's complicated. Launching rockets is complicated. So you need a sequence to start you off. So it's hard to do everything at once. So have a sequence that you think about each part of the timing for the roll. So it might be whether it's a numbered sequence, just like, okay, 1, 2, 3, or whether it's like, okay, I'm going to wrap, paddle, knee, wrist, whatever it might be that you choose to use. I like the paddle knee wrist as a good thought process, and that happens really quickly. It's, you know, that those three things need to happen simultaneously, but we need to give them order so that we can actually get each part of that puzzle.
Yeah, with a knee drive or hip flick, I just sort of I really dig that. I also just say, as soon as you start your sweep, just start your knee drive at the same time, and then that translates kind of into the hip. So, Kevin, like if you're struggling with it, what Tim said, you know, have a sequence, and the knee drive in my, like, again, there's lots of different ways to skin this, but for me, the knee drive and the hip flick sort of start more or less in simultaneously with the sweep, so that can make the timing a bit easier. Anything to add, Brandon?
Yeah, basically exactly what you said. Just the hip snap has to start right when you initiate your sweep, at least if you're doing a sweep roll like we're teaching. And I guess I learned a term from my teaching girlfriend, which is scaffolding. So they use that for teaching. And I would say the scaffolding for helping you learn to roll is to get somebody to support you through the whole sequence. So they're actually holding you there so that you don't have to actually accomplish the roll in order to learn the steps. So that's, if you come to a course with us, we physically get in the water and we hold you and we support you through so that you don't have to think about it and you can learn those pieces.
Nice. Very cool. All right, very quickly, best carnage you've ever witnessed. Bonus points if it involves any of the three of us.
I've been the subject of some pretty good carnage in the past, I guess. When I was in Norway, I ran this big slide that had a massive hole at the bottom of it, got stuck in it real good, and had a friend of mine, he tried to throw bag me while I was still in my boat. And so I grabbed onto the rope while I was still in my boat and was like trying to let it pull me out. And it was, man, I was holding on really hard and it ended up pulling me out of the hole still in my boat. But then I realized that I was all tangled in the rope. So it was like all around my neck and everything. And I ended up having to like pull the plug and just jump out and hold on to the rope and get it off my neck and like tell the guy to let go of the rope. So that's my carnage story.
All right, man, that's a gooder. What about you, Tim?
Well, I've got one that involves Brandon and I.
All right, it's just double points then if it's both of you.
Yeah. Thankfully, I wasn't the one swimming in the end. We were on the elbow last season. I can't remember. It was like 90 CMS or something. And we're all looking at the slide, and there's this hole at the bottom. We're like, oh, it looks kind of sticky. Nah, it won't hold you. And Brandon's like, I'll go paddle. And I was like, okay. So Brandon goes up to the top, and as kayak instructors do when you're paddling in your own time, like, oh, it'll be sweet. Brandon comes down straight into the hole, rolls up. Oh, he's doing all right. Oh, he's surfing, goes upside down, and then just surfs upside down in the pile for what seems like forever. So I'm running back to the top to go get my boat, being like, well, I guess I'm just going to have to fire it up and go save Brandon. And just as I'm coming down, I see Brandon swim. And then for those who have paddled the elbow, you understand how much of a feat this was. Brandon swims, grabs his boat and his paddle, and self-rescues literally 50 meters downstream of the bottom of the slide.
That is impressive. At 90 CMS, that's impressive as well.
Look at
That was pretty random, but yeah. Everything floated to the right spot. I just kind of, collected my thoughts and collected my gear at the same time.
Man, that's impressive. I've never had any carnage because I've never made any mistakes.
No,
none ever. No.
I love your Leviathan story.
All right.
Last swim?
Yeah, that was my last swim. Yeah, my last swim was in Leviathan at 22 CMS, I think it was, and Mikkel and a bunch of other paddlers had paddled it the day before, a little bit higher, I think, which is high. So 22 on Cataract is pretty high. And we'd gone down and we decided, we went down with the crew that wasn't the strongest crew in the world, and so we paddled and we got to zigzag, and people didn't want to run zigzag, and I was kind of bummed, and so we ended up jumping zigzag, and that was kind of disappointing. And then we got to Leviathan, and I was like, man, I got to do something today. I got to run something. And Mikkel had given me beta, and he said, yeah, Leviathan was sweet. We just just rocketed through the bottom, and no worries. So I kind of like got out of my boat and kind of wandered down and had a look, and I was like, yeah, no dramas. It's no big deal. And this was when this was like Blair's first real creeking trip with us. Like, he hadn't really paddled. He was super green. He just swam on the Kananaskis. Let's put it that way. Right. Like, and not bad. He just swam. And I was like, oh my God, who is this guy? So we're out creeking. I didn't even get anyone to set up safety, because I've run Leviathan 1,000 times. I was just like, whatever, never nearly that high. I was put in up the top. No one was watching. And I just dropped in, and the 3 holes just slowed me right down, straight into the hole in the bottom, and just got absolutely disassembled in there. Like, I couldn't even swim. I didn't know. I couldn't get to my spray skirt. I was like pinned on the back of my boat. And then I finally got my knee into my spray skirt from what I remember. And then I just went boom, and went super deep. And I was like, sweet, I'm out. And then I like came up, and I thought I was good. And then I got typewriter'd back into the hole on River Right with my boat, my paddle, up against the wall in the undercut. And Blair was on the other side of the river going like, do you want a throw bag? I'm like, hell no, I don't want a throw bag in there. And so I just swam back in the hole, and off I went, and then popped up and had to get live baited back into the river to get my boat out. It was a mess. It was a gong show. That was my last swim. That was a long time ago. And I'm quite happy. I think I'd probably drown now, because I was pretty fit and strong then. I really don't think that I would survive that anymore. I've seen
it pretty high. It's pretty terrifying in there.
I probably would have died. I would die now. I used to do that with surfing. I'm watching surfing videos, and I used to surf pretty big waves, and I'm like, I'd definitely drown in that now. All right, so we only have a few minutes to go. Man, that went by real quick, eh?
Yeah, no kidding.
Let's see, what do we got?
Oh, I love the question from Ian.
Where are we?
Training tips.
Oh, Ian, is it right down the bottom?
No, I haven't gone to the bottom.
There we go. Got it. Okay, go for it, Brandon.
All right. Any tips for training and getting into the best shape to hit this potentially limited season in full swing? Well, I don't know much about physical training, but I've been big on the whole bike to boat thing lately. And I think that would be a fantastic use of everyone's time right now, especially if you're wanting to help with the whole climate change problem at the same time. So everyone should get a bike trailer and just, see you at the river.
Just like bike laps the can.
Exactly.
I've been prototyping a bike trailer in the back shed with a couple of old bikes.
Yeah, man. I think that's the next big thing in kayaking. Yeah,
that's the next big thing. Yeah, it seems to be like even with skiing and that, right? Like people are there's a lot more of a movement towards that kind of, getting to the mountains or whatever under your own steam. So yeah, it's kind of cool. Fellas, that went like totally different than I think any of us thought it would, but that was super enjoyable. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of the questions, gang, but we're going to have to wrap it up. This was a really nice catch up. I haven't seen Tim in forever, and it's been since whenever this started, I've seen Brandon. So thanks for joining us in our little bro down catch up, everyone. Thanks for the great questions and totally derailing what we were going to talk about, but I think it was great.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so we're going to sign off here, guys, and I'm going to go and we're jumping on the NRS raft frame setup video next at 3 o'clock. I haven't moved from this seat much in the last 6 hours, but
maybe have a drink of water so your voice doesn't die.
I know. I'm going to go chug a liter of water right now. So yeah, we'll be back on in about 10 minutes with Terry and Mark from NRS. And thank you, Tim, for getting up so early this morning. He was up at 3 a.m. answering questions earlier today. And Brandon, thanks so much for your input. And it's here's to hopefully getting on the water with people this season.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank
you.
All
right. Later, fellas.
Bye. Later.